Hello everyone, interested in the origins of ancient Egypt. These times are so distant that no one remembers when and how it arose. But, fortunately, many traces have remained in its area, which we will try to find and use to demonstrate the following theses. My name is Orwoff. Peter Orwoff. I am going to introduce to you my general theory of ancient Egypt. We will deal here with construction in ancient Egypt, and more precisely the location of buildings that were built in this area in ancient times. There are many theories about ancient Egypt, the reasons for its creation, civilization, culture, religion, customs, and the distribution and correlation of objects such as the pyramids. The most interesting and logical theory seems to be Robert Bauval's. It says that the three pyramids in Giza are located according to the position of the three stars in Orion constellation. Specifically, the so-called Orion's belt. And indeed, the location of these stars in the sky and the pyramids in Giza are amazingly similar. But not only this. A few miles further south, exactly corresponding to the arrangement of the stars in the sky, we find a complex of pyramids at Abu Siah, which align the terms of the Nile, and almost exactly corresponds to the arrangement of a group of stars in Taurus constellation, called the Pleiades. Located on the sky map at a distance from the Orion's belt and the galactic equator. The same applies to the next pyramid complexes built farther south at Saqqara, which correspond exactly to the arrangement of groups of stars from the bottom of Perseus constellation. The Gorgon group in Perseus is particularly similar. The complexes of these pyramids are in the same correlation as these star clusters in the sky. To the east of the Gorgon group, in the direction of the Nile, at an appropriate distance to the size of Perseus, there is the ancient capital of ancient Lower Egypt, the city, or rather its remains, once called Memphis. We can find in it the buildings such as the Temple of Papa, the Palace of Pharaoh, Serapeum and many others, which are arranged according to the formula prescribed by the central part stars of Perseus. This raises a compelling assumption that the other stars of this constellation also have their representation in the land of Egypt. Actually, when we compare the positions of Perseus stars with the map of the area around Memphis, it turns out that in places corresponding to the positions of individual Perseus stars, we find buildings such as pyramids, mastabas, tombs, temples, palaces, serapeum or other places of worship, like statues, obelisks. In other places, stars mark city centers, squares, cemeteries, unnatural hills, or areas of long ruined, overgrown and forgotten, unknown buildings. Reflecting on the facts that I have presented, I have come to the conclusion that all objects, cities, towns and villages of ancient Egypt were built according to the stars, the God plan written in the sky, correlated with the Saint River Nile, as a reflection of the galactic equator line. If my assumptions are true, then in the middle of the distance between the pyramids in Giza and Abu Sir should be further objects or their ruins, corresponding to a group of stars called Hyades, which is the main part of the constellation of the Taurus, called the head of the Taurus. After a cursory review of this region, we find a number of objects built in ancient Egypt that accurately reflect the stars of these regions in the sky. Keeping to the principles of my thesis cited here, let us return to the three pyramids in Giza, and, considering them as an image of the Orion's belt in Egypt, let's try to find nearby other known or presumed objects from the time of ancient Egypt. By applying the principle of proportional distance in the field to the real dimensions of the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau and to the size of the Orion's belt on the sky map, we can easily find more probable objects or places of interest from our point of view. Does it remind you of something? Not yet? Let's connect the marked points. Is it clear now what image we have obtained? Is this the image of the constellations of this part of the sky? At least similar. Even very similar. However, not perfect. Why? because the ancient Egyptians measured the position of individual stars in the sky perpendicular to the line of the galactic equator and reflected them on Egypt by measuring their position from the mainstream of the Nile. This results in a slightly distorted picture of today's constellations. According to previous principles, let's find the more consecutive points at ancient Egypt, and join lines. What do we get? More images of the constellations in the Egyptian night sky. These are, of course, our modern constellations. The Egyptians used others, their own, but they were based on the same stars. And the fact that modern constellations perfectly match the arrangement of objects of ancient Egypt testifies to my assumption. In many cases, the reflection is so accurate that even roads and canals have their representation in the sky. Moving further to Egypt, we will notice that at one moment the constellations begin to repeat. Ancient Egypt turned out to be much larger than the divine plan in the sky. But the Egyptians did not mind, and they continued to build cities and villages, again mapping all the stars visible on the celestial sphere. Even in the distant part of ancient Egypt, in the oasis around Fayum, we find patterns of the relevant constellations visible to this day. I am convinced that following on from this, we'll find in Egypt the next and subsequent reflections of the divine plan of heaven on earth. But about the results of further research on my theory I will inform you soon in my next publications. To sum up the above thesis, supported by the indicated evidence, let me formulate my general theory of ancient Egypt. A long time ago, in very distant times, when the Nile Delta was, at most, a great coastal lake, and the Nile Valley was still untouched virginal land, the area became inhabited by the ancient Egyptians. The exact date and the origin of their existence is still largely unknown. These people came to the area of ancient Egypt together with their own fully educated civilization. That is the organization of society, administration, social classes, castes of administrators, beliefs and established religion, their gods and priests. The entire formed socio-religious hierarchy. with an extraordinary knowledge in all areas of life and science, in the broadest sense, which we can only imagine ourselves, and even today we do not know where they had taken the knowledge from. For example, the existence and course of the galactic equator of the Milky Way. They brought with them or were provided with appropriate tools, often very precise, techniques and devices, the traces of which we observe these days, and we are not able to imitate them or understand how they were built and on what principles they worked. Their rulers, or gods, ordered them, persuaded or forced, to settle on this virgin land and build everything according to the divine plan written in the stars in the sky, with the Nile as the axis of the galaxy. There was no departure from this, so their measurements are very accurate, even obsessively accurate, and their buildings, probably of top-down forms and shapes, reflect even the smallest features of the stars which they represent. It is very likely that all the activities of this society were subordinated to the inculcated beliefs in the afterlife. Not excommunication, enduring belief that the gods, who organized it all, created, was gone to heaven indeed, but someday certainly will return, resurrect the dead and take all to eternal life in another world. And when they will come from above, that is from the heavens, the gods could always be sure to find all the living and the dead at precisely located places corresponding to the positions of stars in the sky. Hence the present image of Egypt, as a collection of stars and constellations mapped exactly on Earth, are not blurred even after thousands of years of history, various cataclysms, socio-religious changes, and resulting from a completely modern, contemporary lifestyle. Thank you for your time and attention. I value all questions and opinions, as the topic of conversation to explain the history regarding the general theory of ancient Egypt, including criticism and doubt, are always the engine of progress and development.